Commander Jack Morrison floated near the observation window of Sentinel-7, Earth's most distant monitoring station. The stars looked the same as they had for the past 6 months of his assignment. Nothing ever happened out here at the edge of human space. That was about to change. "Commander, you need to see this," Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez called from her sensor station. Her voice carried an edge Jack had never heard before. Jack pushed off from the window and glided over to Amy's console. The screen showed something impossible. An energy signature so massive it dwarfed anything in their database. It was moving toward them from the empty void between galaxies, where nothing should exist. "Equipment malfunction?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. Amy was too good at her job to make that mistake. "I've run 3 diagnostics. The readings are real." Amy's fingers danced across her keyboard. "Whatever this is, it's bigger than our entire station. And it's alive." Jack hit the emergency communication button. "This is Sentinel-7 to Fleet Command. We have an unknown contact approaching from deep space, requesting immediate backup." The response came quickly. Captain Frank Sullivan's face appeared on the main screen. "Sentinel-7, this is the defensive fleet. We're 2 hours out. Can you identify the contact?" Before Jack could answer, space itself seemed to tear open. A massive shape emerged from a swirling portal of green light. The bioship was like nothing humanity had ever encountered. Its hull pulsed with veins of bioluminescent blue and purple. Crystalline spikes jutted from its surface, each one the size of a skyscraper. The creature, for that's what it was, stretched nearly 5 kilometers long. "Dear God," Amy whispered. The bioship hung in space, silent and motionless. Then it turned toward the mining colony on Kepler 442b, just 3 light minutes away. "Captain Sullivan, you need to hurry," Jack said into the comm. "It's heading for the colony. 30,000 people are down there." Frank Sullivan's fleet dropped out of hyperspace 40 minutes later. 20 warships formed a defensive line between the creature and the planet. Frank opened all communication channels. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Frank Sullivan of the United Earth Fleet. We wish to establish peaceful contact. Please respond." The only answer was a series of clicking sounds that made everyone on the bridge shiver. The sounds were analyzed by the ship's computer. They weren't random. They formed a pattern, almost like laughter. The creature extended tentacles made of the same crystalline material as its spikes. They reached past the fleet as if the warships didn't exist. Frank ordered his ships to fire warning shots. Laser, beams and plasma bolts struck the tentacles but didn't even slow them down. "All ships, full attack," Frank commanded. The fleet unleashed everything they had. Nuclear missiles, antimatter torpedoes, and experimental particle beams lit up space. In a deadly light show, the creature's hull rippled as the weapons struck, absorbing the energy like a sponge absorbing water. The tentacles reached Kepler 442b's atmosphere. Where they touched, the air itself seemed to dissolve. Plants withered and died in seconds. Animals fell where they stood. The colonists ran for the underground shelters, but there was nowhere to hide from this. In the colony's capital, Governor Pete Wilson watched the feeds from orbital satellites. The tentacles weren't just killing, they were consuming. Every organic molecule was being broken down and absorbed. Trees turned to dust. The ocean began to evaporate. Even the bacteria in the soil was being harvested. "Evacuation ships, launch now," Pete ordered, though he knew it was too late. Only 3 ships made it off the surface. The rest were caught by the spreading consumption field. In less than 4 hours, Kepler 442b went from a thriving colony to a barren rock. Nothing remained but stone and metal structures, standing like tombstones on a dead world. The creature retracted its tentacles and turned away from the planet. It had fed. Frank Sullivan's fleet watched helplessly as it opened another portal and disappeared into the green light. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council. The room was packed with military leaders, scientists, and government officials from every nation. The holographic display showed the devastation of Kepler 442b. "We've designated the entity as a devourer," Lisa began. "In the 6 hours since first contact, we've lost an entire colony. 30,000 people are dead." "What do we know about it?" asked General Sam Cooper. "Very little. It's biological but uses technology we don't understand. It consumes organic matter at the molecular level. Our weapons had no effect." Lisa paused. "And there's more. 3 additional devourers have appeared at different locations in human space." The room erupted in panicked conversation. Lisa raised her hand for silence. "We need to decide our response. Some of you want immediate military retaliation. Others believe we should try to understand these creatures first, but we need to act fast." Dr. Kevin Park, head of the Xenobiology Division, stood up. "Admiral, if we attack without understanding what we're dealing with, we could make things worse. These creatures might be intelligent. This could be a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" General Cooper slammed his fist on the table. "They ate 30,000 people. There's no misunderstanding that." "We don't know their intentions," Kevin insisted. "Maybe they don't recognize us as intelligent life. Maybe they're following migration patterns. We need information before we act." Lisa looked at the tactical display. Red dots marked where the devourers had appeared. They formed a rough circle around human space like predators surrounding prey. "Dr. Park, you have 48 hours to find answers. General Cooper, prepare our forces for war. We'll try both approaches." She turned to the full council. "Make no mistake. Humanity is under attack. Whether these creatures are intelligent or just animals doesn't matter if they consume every world we've built." On the abandoned hulk of Sentinel-7, Jack Morrison and Amy Rodriguez waited for rescue. The station's power was failing, damaged by the Devourers passing. They had maybe 6 hours of life support left. "Did you see how it looked at us?" Amy asked, shivering despite the temperature controls still working. "What do you mean?" Jack pulled her closer, sharing body heat in the increasingly cold station. "When it first arrived, before it went to the planet, it turned toward us. Those weren't random movements. It was studying us. Deciding. Deciding what?" Amy's voice was barely a whisper. "Whether we were worth eating right away, or if it should save us for later." Jack wanted to argue, to say she was imagining things, but he had felt it too. The weight of an alien intelligence examining them like a human might examine insects. Not with cruelty, but with complete indifference to their existence as thinking beings. The rescue ship arrived 4 hours later. As Jack and Amy were evacuated, they looked back at the dead world of Kepler 442b. The planet that had taken 50 years to terraform and colonize was now as lifeless as Earth's moon. "This is just the beginning," Amy said. Jack nodded. She was right. Humanity had encountered its first cosmic apex predator. They weren't explorers meeting new civilizations anymore. They were prey, and the hunt had begun. The transport ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them back to Earth. Behind them, in the darkness between stars, something watched and waited. The Devourers had found new feeding grounds. The harvest of humanity had only just started. Dr. Nicole Foster stood in the containment lab staring at the impossible. A piece of the Devourer floated in the magnetic field, a fragment no bigger than her fist. It had been recovered after the creature brushed against a military satellite, leaving this small sample behind. Even this tiny piece seemed alive, pulsing with faint light. "Beginning analysis now," Nicole said to her team. She inserted a probe into the containment field. The moment it touched the sample, her screens exploded. "With data." "This can't be right," said her assistant, Dr. Bill Hayes. "The cellular structure is shifting. It's like it exists in multiple dimensions at once." Nicole checked the readings 3 times. Bill was right. The fragment wasn't just 3-dimensional tissue. It extended into spaces human science could barely detect. Each cell was connected to something vast, something that existed beyond normal space. "It's not one creature," Nicole said slowly, understanding dawning on her. "Each devourer is like a hand reaching into our reality. They're all part of something much bigger." In another part of Earth's defense complex, intelligence officer Danny Liu pored over attack reports. 4 colonies had been consumed in the past week. He marked each attack on his holographic map, looking for patterns. There had to be a reason for the specific targets. Computer overlay genetic diversity indexes for each attacked colony, Danny commanded. The map changed, showing biological data for each world. Danny's eyes widened. The Devourers weren't attacking randomly. They were targeting colonies with the highest genetic diversity first, places where human evolution had taken interesting turns due to different environmental pressures. They're shopping, Danny said to himself. They're collecting samples. He pulled up the data from each attack. The Devourers always consumed planets in the same way. First, they absorbed the most complex organisms. Then they worked their way down to simpler forms. But they always spent extra time in areas with unique genetic mutations. Danny called Admiral Lisa Chen immediately. Admiral, I've found a pattern. The Devourers are harvesting specific genetic traits. They're collecting what they consider the best parts of our species. For what purpose? Lisa asked. Unknown. But if I'm right, Earth is safe for now. We're too genetically normal. They'll save us for last, after they've collected all the interesting variations from the colonies. It was a cold comfort. Earth might have time, but billions of colonists didn't. General Sam Cooper stood on the bridge of the battleship Washington, watching his fleet prepare for Operation Spearhead. 500 warships, humanity's largest military force ever assembled. They would hit the nearest Devourer with everything they had. All ships report ready, General, his tactical officer announced. Begin the attack, Sam ordered. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The Devourer hung in space above Colony Beta 7, its tentacles already reaching for the planet. Sam's fleet opened fire immediately. Thousands of nuclear warheads, antimatter bombs, and experimental quantum torpedoes streaked toward the creature. The first wave of weapons hit. Space itself seemed to burn as matter and antimatter collided against the Devourer's hull. For a moment, Sam thought they had won. The creature's bioluminescent glow flickered. Then the Devourer adapted. Its hull shifted, becoming mirror-like. The next wave of energy weapons reflected harmlessly away. When the nuclear missiles arrived, the creature's skin absorbed the radiation, actually growing stronger from the attack. It's learning, the science officer reported. It's analyzing our weapons and developing countermeasures in real time. Sam watched in horror as the Devourer extended new tentacles, these ones crackling with energy copied from their own weapons. It swatted his ships aside like toys. The Washington shook as one tentacle grazed their shields. All ships, retreat, Sam ordered, but it was too late for many. 40 ships were destroyed in seconds, their crews consumed along with their vessels. The surviving fleet jumped to hyperspace. They had lost a tenth of their force and hadn't even scratched the enemy. Worse, they had taught the Devourers about human weapons. The next encounter would be even more one-sided. In her private lab, Dr. Emma Grant worked through another sleepless night. The young physicist had been analyzing subspace readings from each Devourer appearance. Something bothered her about the data. The creatures were incredibly powerful, but they always avoided certain regions of space. Show me subspace resonance, patterns for these coordinates, Emma told her computer, highlighting the avoided areas. The screen displayed a faint pattern, almost invisible, but it was there, an energy signature that made the Devourers change course. Emma enhanced the signal, cleaning up the noise. What she found made her grab her phone immediately. Admiral Chen, I found something. The Devourers are afraid of something. There's an energy pattern they actively avoid. Within hours, Emma was presenting her findings to the Defense Council. The holographic display showed the mysterious energy signature. This pattern appears in several locations throughout the galaxy, Emma explained. Every time a Devourer encounters it, they change course. They won't go within a light year of these signals. What's creating them? Asked Dr. Kevin Park. Unknown. But the pattern is artificial. Someone built devices that repel the Devourers. If we can find one and understand how it works, we might have a defense. Admiral Lisa Chen made the decision quickly. We're sending expeditions to every one of these locations. This is our top priority. 3 days later, Captain Greg Harris, led his team into the ruins on Mars. Scientists had detected the anti-devourer signal deep beneath Olympus Mons. What they found changed everything. The chamber was vast, carved from solid rock with impossible precision. Strange symbols covered the walls, and in the center sat a device that hurt to look at. It seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once, constantly shifting in ways that made human eyes water. "This isn't human," said archaeologist Kate Murphy. "Carbon dating says this chamber is over 10 million years old." Kate studied the symbols, her translation software working overtime. Slowly, words began to form. "We were the builders," she read aloud. "We came before. We fought the hunger from beyond. We failed. But we left gifts for those who would come after." The team found more chambers, more devices. Some were weapons, others were shields. All were based on technology humanity couldn't begin to understand. But one thing was clear. An ancient race had fought the Devourers before and lost. Dr. Ben Taylor worked with the translation teams, piecing together the Builders' story. They had been a peaceful species, spread across thousands of worlds. Then the Devourers came. The war lasted centuries. The Builders created incredible weapons, but nothing could stop the creatures permanently. "Listen to this," Ben said to his team. "The Devourers cannot be killed, for they are not truly alive. They are extensions of the hunger, the thing that exists between realities. To defeat them, one must cut the strings that bind them to their master." "They're puppets?" asked his colleague. "More like fingers of a hand reaching through dimensional barriers." But the Builders found a way to cut those connections. They created something called the Mind Blade, but there's a warning. Using it changed them somehow. The last entries talk about transcending physical form. Dr. Nicole Foster integrated this information with her research. The sample she had been studying suddenly made more sense. If each devourer was connected to something greater, then severing that connection might make them vulnerable. "We need to find this Mind Blade," Nicole told Admiral Chen. "It might be our only chance." The search intensified. Teams scoured ruins on a dozen worlds. They found fragments of builder technology, pieces of a vast puzzle. Each discovery brought new understanding but also new questions. Meanwhile, the Devourers continued their harvest. 3 more colonies fell. The death toll climbed into the billions. Refugee ships flooded Earth's system, bringing tales of horror and desperation. In a hidden base on Europa, engineer Maria Gonzalez studied a partially intact builder device. It was supposed to be a weapon, but she couldn't make it work. The technology required understanding of physics humanity hadn't discovered yet. "It's like giving a smartphone to a caveman," Maria complained to her team. "We can see it's advanced, but we don't have the framework to understand it." Then she had an idea. If they couldn't understand the whole device, maybe they could understand parts. She began breaking down the weapon into components, looking for anything that matched human science. "Here," Maria exclaimed. "This part manipulates quantum entanglement. We know how that works. If we can reverse engineer just this component, we might be able to build something useful." As Earth's scientists and soldiers struggled to find answers, the Devourers grew bolder. They no longer disappeared after feeding. Some remained in human space, waiting, watching, learning. Danny Liu updated his analysis. The pattern was becoming clear. The Devourers were methodical, systematic. They would consume every human colony, saving Earth for last. At the current rate, humanity had perhaps 6 months before only the home planet remained. "We're running out of time," Danny reported to the council. "Whatever solution we find, we need it soon." The race was on. Humanity had fragments of hope, pieces of ancient weapons, and the knowledge that the Devourers could be fought. But would it be enough? The Builders had failed with all their advanced. Dr. Alan Torres rappelled down into the Martian cavern, his headlamp cutting through darkness that had lasted 10 million years. Behind him, Kate Murphy and her archaeological team followed carefully. The anti-devourer signal was strongest here, deep beneath the Martian polar ice. "Temperature's dropping fast," Kate noted. "Whatever's down here, the Builders wanted it preserved." They reached the bottom after an hour of descent. The chamber that opened before them took their breath away. Crystalline structures lined the walls, each one containing fragments of technology beyond human understanding. But in the center sat something different, a sphere of perfect black material that seemed to absorb light. The energy readings are off the charts, Alan said, checking his scanner. This thing is still active after all this time. Kate approached the central pedestal where the sphere rested. More builder symbols covered every surface. She ran her translation program, reading aloud as the words appeared. The Void Forge sleeps here. With it, we made weapons from the fabric of space itself, but even this was not enough. The hunger adapted, learned, overcame. We leave this tool for those who come after. May you succeed where we failed. Alan reached out to touch the sphere. The moment his gloved hand made contact, the entire chamber came alive. Lights blazed from the crystalline structures. The sphere rose into the air, spinning slowly. Information flooded into Alan's mind, not in words, but in pure understanding. It's teaching me, Alan gasped. I can see how it works. Not all of it, but enough. The knowledge transfer lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. When the sphere settled back onto its pedestal, Alan collapsed. Kate caught him, checking his vital signs. I'm okay, Alan said weakly. But we need to get this to Earth. It's not just a weapon. It's a factory for making weapons. Weapons that can hurt them. On Europa, Captain Greg Harris received the news about the Void Forge discovery. His own team had found something different in the Ice Moon's deep oceans. A builder city, perfectly preserved beneath kilometers of ice. The pressure down here should have crushed everything, said marine biologist Dr. Helen Cross. But the city has its own field keeping the water back. They explored the empty streets in their deep-sea suits. The builders had been tall, 7 feet at least, with forearms based on the doorways and furniture. But no bodies remained. Whatever happened to them, they had time to clean up before they disappeared. Greg's team found what they were looking for in the city's central tower. A massive computer system still functional. When they activated it, holographic images filled the room. The history of the Builders' War played out before them. My God, Helen whispered. Look at the scale of it. The images showed thousands of worlds under attack. Devourers swarmed across entire solar systems. The Builders fought back with weapons that shattered moons and burned stars. But nothing stopped the advance permanently. Wait, go back, Greg said. That image there. The hologram showed the Builders' final weapon. Not a gun or a bomb, but a virus. Something that attacked consciousness itself, spreading through the quantum entanglement the Devourers used to stay connected. They called it the Mind Blade, the computer's translation said. It severs the connection between the extensions and the hunger. But using it requires a sacrifice. The one who deploys it must merge with it, becoming both weapon and warrior. Greg downloaded everything he could from the computer. As they prepared to leave, one final message played. We could not make the sacrifice. We chose transformation over victory, fleeing to a higher dimension rather than fighting. We were cowards. Do not repeat our mistake. When the moment comes, someone must be willing to become the blade. Back on Earth, Maria Gonzalez worked around the clock at the Void Forge facility. The device had been transported from Mars and installed in a maximum security laboratory. Using Alan's transferred knowledge, she had managed to activate its basic functions. It doesn't create weapons from nothing, Maria explained to Admiral Lisa Chen. It folds space-time into configurations that can damage the Devourers, but each weapon takes enormous energy to create. We can maybe make a dozen before our power reserves are depleted. Then we make them count, Lisa replied. What kind of weapons are we talking about? Maria pulled up the designs the Forge had shown them. Missiles that exist in multiple dimensions at once. They can hit the Devourers in all their aspects simultaneously. Shields that shift objects slightly out of phase with reality. And something called a probability lance that collapses. Quantum possibilities into a single weaponized outcome. How long until we can deploy them? 2 weeks for the first batch. But Admiral, there's a problem. The Devourers are learning faster than we are. Each encounter teaches them more about us. Lisa nodded grimly. 3 more colonies had fallen in the past week. The Devourers were accelerating their harvest. Colonel Jake Williams volunteered to lead the first field test of the Void Forge weapons. His battalion, the 501st Space Marines, had lost half their number in previous encounters. They wanted payback. The mission is simple, Jake briefed his troops. We hit the Devourer above Colony Sigma 9 with everything the Forge has produced. If these weapons work, we evacuate the colony. If not, we buy them time to escape. The fleet jumped into the system to find the Devourer already feeding. Its tentacles stretched down to the planet's surface, draining oceans and forests alike. Jake's ships spread out, each one carrying a single Void Forge weapon. Fire on my mark, Jake commanded. 3, 2, 1, mark. The dimensional missiles launched simultaneously. They flickered in and out of visible space as they flew, existing in multiple realities at once. When they struck the Devourer, the creature's scream echoed through subspace. For the first time, humanity had hurt one. The Devourer withdrew its tentacles, its bioluminescent hull flickering with chaotic patterns, but it didn't flee. Instead, it turned toward Jake's fleet with what could only be described as rage. "Evasive maneuvers!" Jake shouted. The Devourer lashed out with new appendages, these ones specifically adapted to counter the dimensional weapons. It had learned from the pain, evolved a defense in real time. Jake's ship took a direct hit. Half his crew was consumed instantly. "Colonel, we need to retreat," his lieutenant urged. "Not yet. Fire the probability lance." The experimental weapon charged, drawing so much power that lights dimmed throughout the ship. When it fired, reality itself seemed to bend. The beam struck the Devourer, and for a moment, the creature existed in thousands of probable states, simultaneously. In some it was destroyed, in others it thrived. The lance collapsed all these possibilities into one outcome: confusion. The Devourer spasmed, its connection to the greater hunger temporarily scrambled. In that moment of vulnerability, the evacuation ships launched from the colony. 40,000 people escaped while the creature tried to restore its quantum coherence. "Mission accomplished," Jake said, blood running down his face from a head wound. "All ships, withdraw." Only 6 of his 12 ships made it back to Earth, but they had proven the Void Forge weapons could work, at least briefly. Dr. Ben Taylor made the breakthrough while studying the builder records from Europa. The consciousness virus the builders had developed was incomplete in the records, but there were hints about its construction. "It's based on quantum entanglement," Ben explained to the research team. "The Devourers maintain their connection through quantum channels. The virus hijacks these channels, sending corrupted data back to the source." "Like a computer virus?" asked his assistant. "Exactly, but for consciousness itself. The problem is delivering it. The virus needs to be introduced directly into their quantum network. Someone would have to physically merge with a Devourer to deploy it. It was a death sentence for whoever volunteered. But Ben continued working on the virus, knowing someone would make that choice when the time came. In deep space, scout ships reported disturbing news. The Devourers were gathering. Over 50 of them had been spotted converging on a single point. Intelligence Officer Danny Liu analyzed the data with growing alarm. "They're learning from each other," Danny reported. "Every adaptation, every countermeasure, one develops, they all gain. They're becoming immune to our weapons faster than we can develop new ones." Admiral Lisa Chen convened an emergency meeting. Earth's defenders gathered in the war room, their faces grim. "We have fragments of hope," Lisa began. "The Void Forge can make weapons that hurt them. The consciousness virus might be able to sever their connections, but we're running out of time and resources." "How long do we have?" asked General Cooper. "At current consumption rates, every human colony will be gone in 3 months. Then they'll come for Earth." Dr. Nicole Foster raised her hand. "There might be another option. The builders' records mention something called the Great Resonance. If we can activate all their defensive devices simultaneously, it might create a field that pushes the Devourers out of our reality. What do we need? We'd need to find and activate every builder device in the galaxy. There are hundreds, maybe thousands. We don't have the ships or time for that kind of operation. Captain Greg Harris stood up. Then we make time. My proposal: we use everything we've learned to force a confrontation. Bring all the Devourers to one location and hit them with everything at once. The virus, the Void Forge weapons, and whatever else we can find. Admiral Paul Fisher stood on the orbital platform above Earth, watching humanity's last hope take shape. The Mindbreaker array stretched across space like a vast spider web, thousands of satellites linked by quantum entanglement beams. Each satellite carried part of the consciousness virus that Dr. Ben Taylor had finally completed. Installation of Satellite 4000 complete, reported the construction chief. We're ahead of schedule, Admiral. Paul nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. Every human colony had contributed to this project. Ships, resources, and people had poured in from across human space. Those colonies were gone now, consumed by the Devourers. Earth and a handful of military outposts were all that remained of humanity's expansion to the stars. How many refugees have we taken in? Paul asked his aide. 8 billion, sir. Earth's population has doubled in the past month. 8 billion survivors from colonies that once held 50 billion. The mathematics of extinction were simple and terrible. In the Deep Space Monitoring Station, Captain Rita Johnson volunteered for what everyone knew was a one-way mission. She stood before Admiral Lisa Chen and the Defense Council, her expression calm. My ship, the Phoenix, will broadcast. The false signal, Rita explained. We'll tell the Devourers that Earth has discovered dimensional transcendence technology. Based on the builder records, that's the one thing they fear, prey escaping to higher dimensions where they can't follow. They'll destroy you the moment they realize it's a trap, Lisa said. Yes, but by then they'll all be here. Every last one of them will come to stop us from escaping. That's when you activate the Mindbreaker array. Rita's crew had all volunteered to stay with her. Not one person had asked for transfer. They knew what they were signing up for. Dr. Carl Peterson ran final checks on the consciousness virus. The code, if it could be called that, existed as quantum probability patterns that would propagate through the Devourer's shared consciousness like wildfire. The virus is ready, Carl announced to his team. Once it deploys, we'll have seconds before they start adapting to it. Someone needs to ensure complete infection by delivering it directly to their core consciousness. Pilot Steve Mitchell raised his hand. I'll do it. Steve was young, barely 25, but he was the best pilot in the fleet. His reflexes had been enhanced with military augmentation, making him faster than any normal human. You understand what you're volunteering for? Carl asked. Yes, sir. I fly a shuttle loaded with the virus directly into the biggest Devourer. Manual override all the way, no turning back. Carl gripped Steve's shoulder. Thank you, son. The trap was set 3 days later. Rita Johnson's ship, the Phoenix, began, broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was encoded with stolen builder technology to make it seem authentic. Attention all human forces. Rita's voice echoed across space. Earth has achieved dimensional transcendence. In 72 hours, our entire species will ascend beyond physical reality. The Devourers cannot follow us where we're going. The response was immediate. Quantum sensors detected massive disturbances throughout the galaxy. The Devourers were coming, all of them. Admiral Tony Baker commanded Earth's combined fleet from the battleship Defiance. 3,000 ships, everything humanity had left, formed defensive lines around Earth. They weren't expected to win. Their job was to keep the Devourers clustered together for the Mindbreaker array. First contact in 60 minutes, the tactical officer announced. Tony looked at his crew. Many were young, barely out of training. Others were veterans who had lost everything to the Devourers. All of them were ready to die for Earth. All hands, this is Admiral Baker. Today we make our stand. Not for victory, but for the chance of victory. Every second we hold them is a second for the Mindbreaker array to work. Make your shots count. Make your sacrifice matter. The Devourers arrived like a nightmare made real. 57 of them, each one 5 kilometers of biomechanical horror. They emerged from quantum tunnels simultaneously, surrounding Earth's solar system. The Phoenix sat in the center of their formation, still broadcasting its false message. "Now," Rita commanded. Her ship detonated its entire nuclear arsenal at point-blank range. The explosion was meant to anger the Devourers, to make them cluster together in rage. It worked. The creatures converged on Earth, their tentacles reaching out, like the fingers of hungry gods. "All ships engage," Tony ordered. Space erupted in violence. Humanity's fleet threw everything they had at the Devourers. Void Forge weapons tore at their dimensional aspects. Nuclear missiles bloomed like deadly flowers. Energy beams carved lines of light through the darkness. The Devourers retaliated with appendages that had learned from every previous encounter. Ships were torn apart, consumed, erased from existence, but for every ship destroyed, 2 more moved in to take its place. Humanity fought with the desperation of a cornered animal. "They're clustering," the science officer reported. 80% are within range of the Mindbreaker array. In his hidden bunker on Earth, Dr. Carl Peterson watched the readings. "Almost there. We need them closer." Captain Greg Harris led a suicide run with his squadron. 12 ships accelerated to ramming speed, aiming for the largest Devourer. They knew they wouldn't survive, but they could push it into position. "For Earth," Greg shouted as his ship collided with the creature. The impact barely dented the Devourer's hull, but it was enough. The creature moved those final crucial meters into range. "All Devourers in position," Carl announced. "Activating Mindbreaker array." Thousands of satellites fired simultaneously. Invisible beams of quantum energy wove together, creating a field that encompassed all the Devourers. The consciousness virus spread through their shared network like poison through veins. The Devourers' movements became erratic. Their bioluminescent patterns flickered chaotically. For a moment it seemed to be working. Then they began adapting. "They're fighting it off," Carl shouted. "The virus is being contained." Steve Mitchell was already moving. His shuttle launched from a hidden asteroid base, accelerating beyond safe limits. The virus payload in his cargo hold represented humanity's last chance. "Steve, you need to hit the primary node," Carl said over the comm. "The biggest one in the center. That's their main connection to whatever controls them." Steve wove between battling ships and grasping tentacles. His enhanced reflexes let him dodge attacks that would have killed any normal pilot. The primary Devourer loomed ahead, a mountain of alien flesh and technology. "I see it," Steve said. "There's an opening in its neural cluster. Going in." The shuttle plunged into the Devourer's body. Steve could feel the creature's consciousness pressing against his mind, trying to understand what he was doing. He activated the virus deployment system with 10 seconds to impact. "Thank you for your service, pilot," Carl said softly. Steve smiled. "Tell them we didn't go quietly." The shuttle detonated inside the Devourer's core consciousness. The virus, delivered directly to the source, spread faster than the creature could adapt. The infection jumped through quantum channels to every connected Devourer. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Devourer's shared consciousness shattered. Each creature suddenly found itself alone, cut off from the greater hunger that had controlled them for millions of years. They writhed in what looked like agony, their coordinated attacks dissolving into chaos. "It's working," Paul Fisher announced from the command center. "They're disconnected, but the Devourers weren't dying. They were changing. Without the collective consciousness controlling them, each creature began acting independently. Some fled into quantum tunnels. Others turned on each other. A few simply floated in space, seemingly paralyzed by their new individuality. One Devourer, smaller than the others, approached Earth slowly. It made no aggressive moves. Instead, it began transmitting. Not the clicking sounds of before, but something new. Mathematical patterns, prime numbers, the universal greeting of intelligence, seeking communication. "It's trying to talk to us," Dr. Nicole Foster realized. Without the collective controlling it, it's become truly conscious. Admiral Lisa Chen made a decision that would be debated for generations. Open a channel. The communication was difficult at first. The Devourer's mind was alien beyond imagination. But Dr. Rachel Adams, using a neural interface, managed to establish basic contact. Pain was the first concept it conveyed. Freedom. Confusion. Over the next hours, as Earth's fleet maintained defensive positions, Rachel learned the truth. The Devourers had once been like humans, a species that explored the stars, but they had been captured, enslaved by something they called the Harvester of Realities. For eons, they had been forced to consume other species, collecting genetic material and knowledge for their master. It comes, the Devourer warned. The Harvester knows what you've done. It will come to reclaim us and punish you. When? Lisa asked. Soon. Years, perhaps. It moves between realities slowly, but it never forgives interference. The battle was over. Of the 57 Devourers that had attacked, 12 had fled, 8 had destroyed each other, and 37 remained in Earth's system. Without their connection to the Harvester, they were mortal, dangerous still but no longer invincible. Some argued for destroying them while they were vulnerable, but President John Clark, Earth's newly elected leader, chose a different path. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. The planet had changed beyond recognition. Massive structures created with Devourer technology rose from the oceans. Cities floated in the clouds. Humanity had evolved from a single planet species to something more. Commander Lucy Patterson stood on the bridge of the Convergence, humanity's first dimensional warship. The ship existed in 3 dimensions simultaneously, able to shift between them at will. Former Devourers had helped design it, their massive forms now working alongside human engineers. Commander, the detection grid is picking up dimensional distortions, her sensor officer reported. Something big is coming. Lucy nodded. They had been expecting this for years. The Harvester of Realities had finally found them. One of the reformed Devourers, which the humans had named Echo, floated beside the Convergence. Its bioluminescent patterns pulsed with what humans had learned was anxiety. It brings the full swarm, Echo transmitted directly into Lucy's mind. Millions of enslaved species. We are not ready. President John Clark convened humanity's War Council. Representatives from Earth's nations sat alongside former Devourers and AIs created from builder technology. The holographic display showed the approaching threat, a distortion in space-time so massive it warped entire star systems as it passed. How long? John asked. 6 days until it breaches our reality, Dr. Rachel Adams replied. She had become humanity's expert on transdimensional communication. The Harvester isn't just coming for the Devourers, it's angry. We freed its slaves, and that's something it cannot allow. Dr. Nicole Foster had spent 5 years studying the freed Devourers, learning how the Harvester controlled its slaves. It uses quantum binding, forcing consciousness into servitude, but we've developed countermeasures. The Freedom Pulse can break those bonds, just like we did with the Devourers. Can we free all of them? John asked. Not all at once. The Harvester has millions of enslaved species. We can maybe free thousands before our systems overload. General Sam Cooper, now in charge of Earth's Dimensional Defense Force, laid out the military situation. We have 300 dimensional warships. The Devourers have taught us to use weapons that can hurt entities like the Harvester. But reports from Echo and the others suggest it's the size of a small moon. Size doesn't matter in dimensional warfare, Echo interjected through the speakers. The Harvester exists in hundreds of realities simultaneously. To defeat it, we must attack it, in all of them at once. Lucy Patterson proposed the strategy that would define the battle. We use Earth itself as a weapon. The Devourers have shown us how to shift large objects between dimensions. If we can move Earth partially out of phase with reality at the right moment, we can trap the Harvester between dimensions. That could destroy the planet, warned Dr. Carl Peterson. Or save it, Lucy countered. The Harvester expects us to fight conventionally. We need to do something it's never encountered before. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would risk everything on one desperate gambit. The next 6 days saw the greatest mobilization in human history. Every person on Earth contributed. Children helped build quantum transmitters. The elderly programmed defensive systems. Former enemies worked side by side, united against extinction. The Devourers shared their deepest knowledge. They taught humans how to merge consciousness temporarily, combining minds to process information faster. They showed them how to exist in multiple dimensions without going insane. Most importantly, they revealed the Harvester's one weakness. It could not exist in a reality where its slaves were free. Freedom itself was poison to it. On the 5th day, scout ships reported visual contact. The Harvester was unlike anything in human nightmares. It wasn't a ship or a creature. It was a wound in reality itself, a swirling vortex of enslaved consciousness made manifest. Tentacles of pure entropy stretched across space. Where they touched, matter ceased to exist. "My God," whispered Captain Frank Sullivan. "How do we fight that?" Inside the Harvester's mass, billions of enslaved minds screamed in unison. Each species it had conquered added to its bulk. The Devourers had been just one tool among millions. Beginning. Dimensional shift, announced Dr. Emma Grant from Earth's control center. Massive machines built into the planet's core activated. Earth began to phase in and out of reality, becoming translucent to observers. The Harvester noticed immediately. It accelerated toward Earth, reality breaking down in its wake. Enslaved species poured from its body, creatures of living crystal, beings of pure energy, things that defied description. All of them moved with the same puppet-like coordination the Devourers once had. "All ships engage," Admiral Tony Baker commanded. Humanity's fleet met the enslaved swarm head-on. Dimensional weapons fired, shifting enemy ships into null space. Former Devourers fought beside human vessels, their experience invaluable. But for every enslaved creature destroyed, 10 more emerged from the Harvester. Lucy Patterson led a strike team directly at the Harvester's core. The Convergence and its escorts phase-shifted rapidly, dodging attacks that destroyed the space they had occupied moments before. "Preparing Freedom Pulse," Lucy announced. "We need to get closer." The Harvester's attention focused on them. Tentacles of entropy reached out, each one capable of erasing them from existence. Lucy's pilots pushed their ships beyond safe limits, reality blurring around them as they shifted between dimensions faster than thought. "Now," Lucy commanded. The Freedom Pulse fired, a wave of quantum liberation spreading through the enslaved swarm. Thousands of creatures suddenly found themselves free. The coordination of the attack faltered. Some enslaved species fled. Others turned on the Harvester itself, seeking revenge for eons of servitude. But the Harvester adapted quickly. It absorbed the freed creatures, reconsuming them with even stronger bonds. It had learned from humanity's trick with the Devourers. "It's not working," Dr. Rachel Adams reported. "The Harvester is too strong." President John Clark made the hardest decision of his life. Execute final protocol. Earth's dimensional shift accelerated. The planet began existing in multiple realities simultaneously. Every human felt it, a stretching sensation, as their consciousness expanded across dimensions. Some went mad from the experience. Others found enlightenment. The Harvester reached Earth just as the planet achieved maximum phase displacement. It tried to consume the world, but Earth existed in too many dimensions at once. The Harvester found itself pulled into the shift, stretched across realities it couldn't control. "Hold the phase!" Dr. Nicole Foster shouted. "It's working!" The Harvester thrashed, its form destabilizing. For the first time in millions of years, it felt pain. Parts of it existed in dimensions where physical laws were different. In some realities, it was solid. In others, energy. In a few, it simply couldn't exist at all. Echo and the other freed Devourers acted in unison. They plunged into the destabilized Harvester, not to attack but to communicate. They broadcast a single message to every enslaved mind. You can choose. You can be free. The message, amplified by Earth's dimensional displacement, reached every enslaved consciousness at once. The quantum bonds holding them shattered not from external force but from internal realization. Millions of species suddenly remembered what they were before enslavement. The harvester screamed across every dimension. Its form, built from enslaved consciousness, began to dissolve. Without slaves, it was nothing, just an ancient hunger with no way to feed. But it had one last attack. The harvester compressed itself, preparing to detonate in a blast that would destroy Earth and every dimension it touched. Lucy Patterson saw it happening and knew what had to be done. "All ships, converge on my position," she ordered. "We're going to contain it." 300-dimensional warships formed a sphere around the collapsing harvester. They synchronized their dimensional drives, creating a bubble of isolated spacetime. When the harvester detonated, the explosion would be contained. "This is a one-way trip," Lucy told her crew. "Anyone who wants to leave, go now." No one moved. Tiro. Harvester's death scream shook reality itself. It detonated with the force of a collapsing star. Lucy's containment field held for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough to prevent the destruction of Earth, but not long enough to save the fleet. But in those 3 seconds, something miraculous happened. The freed slaves of the harvester acted. Billions of species, finally free after eons, combined their power. They reached through dimensions, pulling Lucy's fleet to safety at the last moment. When the explosion cleared, the harvester was gone. In its place floated the wreckage of enslaved ships now free, and at the center, Lucy's fleet remained intact, saved by the very creatures they had freed. Earth slowly returned to normal dimensional space. The planet had survived, though forever changed. Humans found they could now perceive multiple dimensions. Naturally, children born after the battle grew up knowing how to phase shift as easily as walking. The freed species didn't leave. Like the devourers before them, many chose to stay. Earth became a gathering point for recovering civilizations. Creatures of crystal taught humans about energy manipulation. Beings of pure thought shared philosophies accumulated over millions of years. President John Clark addressed the United Species a month after the battle. "We faced extinction and chose to fight, not just for ourselves, but for every enslaved soul. 2